Live out. We are also live on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. So hello, all my LinkedIn folks as well. All right, cool. So we are going to be discussing the dirty dozen today and all of the chemicals in your food, where your food comes from, and how potentially your children can be impacted by all of these pesky chemicals that you may or may not know anything about. So on this holistic solution, we are going to be discussing all about the dirty dozen, how they determine what the dirty dozen is, what the dozen is, right? And then we are going to talk about food processing and talk a little bit more about the toxicity, herbicides, pesticides, GMOs, glyphosates, who knows? We'll talk about probably quite a bit in this episode of The Holistic Solution. My name is Dr. Erica Steele, board certified naturopathic doctor, and really, I'm a holistic doctor at the end of the day.
Hey. How y'all doing? Welcome to the Holistic Solution. I am. They call me Ferdinand. We bring our balance, leader of many disciplines, and I'm here with Dr. Steele. We're here today to talk a little bit about the dirty dozen, harmful pesticides that are in your food. Parents, I know y'all have noticed different types of behaviors that are a little outside of the ordinary with your children. And I can almost guarantee you that there's a few different things that are in the food that could help cause these different problems.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I don't think that people are as aware. I think there's also a lot of misconception around organic. I think that there's also a lot of deceit in the world of organic. So, what I mean by that is this. There are standards when we talk about organic. So there's a USDA standard, right? That's one particular standard. But then there is also, a family farm organic standard, right? And even though they may not necessarily be able to afford or can go through the USDA procedures, they may practice more organic, right? And when I say organic, it's no spray, like absolutely no spray. And also too, I would say to mineralize the soil, but I digress. So no spray would be considered organic, right? And then certain farmers do low spray or no spray. You can actually speak directly with the farmers if you buy local, and they will talk to you about it. You can build a relationship like anything else. Building relationships with your local community is really important. Building those strong bonds in your community, getting community gardens. I could literally go on and on and on about it, so that you get absolutely, where it's grown. I know that there's different weather challenges for sure, but there's also a lot of really good affordable options as well if you want to go that route. I really advocate for everyone, at least right now, to get off of the food supply simply because of the high levels of toxicity. These are not things that we're just making up. These are actual healthcare concerns that are being ignored. And we can no longer just look the other way and turn the other cheek. We have to have environmental protections, especially for our basic resources like our food, our water, our air, those sorts of things.
Dr. Steele, I really appreciate you bringing that to the table, because that's a fact. We really do need to stand together and pay attention to what's going on in our environments. When we look up in the sky, we see clouds that don't look like regular clouds, right? Well, they come out of the tail end of an airplane. What is that that's still up there after we don't see the airplane 10 minutes later, an hour later? What is that that's still in the air? Is it coming down? Is it moving somewhere else? What's going on, right? Some people call these chemtrails. But then we've also got to think about what farmers would have to do to keep food growing if they don't have the natural process of the circle of life happening on their farms, right? Well, the vast majority of people in America, what I know about them is in the fall, they're raking leaves. Those leaves get taken somewhere and put somewhere, and what they're not doing, those leaves are not populating the ground. They're not giving that soil the nutrients that it needs. So how is food still being grown? These are all questions that we should be asking ourselves so that we can come to some answers. Because right now we have a lot of food that's being consumed on a daily basis across this country. Now, worldwide, definitely it's through the roof. But if we just focus on just this country, it's a whole lot of food that's being consumed every single day. But the natural process of being able to make that food grow, to manifest that food, is not happening and hasn't been happening for decades. So what kind of problems does that create? What kinds of issues do we see in society that are almost a mirror of this process, Dr. Steele?
So we know all about, and I was just giving some of our TikTok friends, thank you guys so much for sharing and liking the live. And so naturally, when you have lack of minerals in your food and high levels of toxicity in your food, you're going to have challenges, right? But I want to kind of go back a little bit because I remember before the show, you had given me, that study and we were looking at it, and I definitely want to touch on it because it's relevant. But I think that what's not correlated is also the people that live in those regions, that live in farm regions, right? So I remember when you were speaking about children that I've treated with chronic UTIs, right, that shouldn't have UTIs that young, and had been through the traditional route of antibiotic, right? And finally came to me kind of as a last resort. And at the core of it, right, they were exposed to what's in the air, right? And there's all kinds of things in the air. So some people call it chemtrails. I know in Virginia Beach specifically, because of, the sound of freedom, they have a lot of jet fuel. Well, jet fuel has xylene in it. Xylene actually affects the thyroid. So there is a higher per capita thyroid issues in that particular region because of that. Even in New York, they had a issue of, and one of my patients was affected by it. There was a whole incidence of, I believe it was Black men specifically, that were developing brain tumors, and they could not figure out, what toxin or what thing was causing it. And these are a lot of things. And I don't want to scare the audience naturally, because that's the initial, oh my God, fear, right? But, and that's honestly a part of deconstructing your healthcare, right? It's facing the realities that our environment, right? Our bodies and our environment are not sustainable together in the current state that they're in. And if we continue to abuse our bodies and our world, we are going to have a serious problem. And so we have to come back to our roots. We have to come back to our ancestry before the craziness of colonization took place. We have to come back because we've gone way too far. One of the things with the most recent large scale clinical trial that took place, it's like, we have to recognize that there are a lot of things that are out of our control right now, but there are also a lot of things that are in our control.
That's a
and
fact.
and we have to begin to look at these things, start small, right? And so the Dirty Dozen list is attainable, right? It's 12 things, 12 fruits and vegetables that you focus on, getting them organic and or locally sourced. So that's only 12 things that you can work on. And here's the other thing is we do it a little bit at a time. It is going to take time to decolonize your life. And that's why we give you the holistic solution, because it provides you practical solutions. So here we go. We've got the Dirty Dozens. We're definitely going to touch on the study because I think it's fascinating. And I do think there's something about North Carolina sticks out to me, truly, because North Carolina has tons. People don't realize how much farming goes on out in Carolina. So we love Carolina for that, but there's definitely a lot of challenges, and the locals will tell you that. So, yeah.
One of the things that you said a minute or two ago was that we need to get back to the ways of the ancient ancestry. And I agree that we need to decolonize our lives as much as possible, completely, really, a complete eradicating of the colonization mindset. But for those who do subscribe to certain religions, I'm going to go ahead and touch real quick on Exodus 20:12. Okay. So Exodus 20:12 goes like this: Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. All right, so I want to be very clear with the audience out here on what I'm actually talking about using Exodus 20:12. Okay, the ancient ancestors who wrote the scrolls that are a part of what we call the Bible today, the extension of the original canon. We have to keep in mind that they weren't writing about their mother and their father. They were writing about their ancient ancestors. So what does it really mean for us now in this digital age to read something like that? It means that we need to honor our ancestors. We need to honor the ways that they lived. We need to honor the things that they ate. We need to honor the rites and rituals that they went through. And as a result of that, we manifest the same on the plane of things made manifest, or on the physical plane, we manifest the same capabilities that our ancient ancestors had, because we do have them in real time, but we have to act to manifest them, right? So these scriptures, use them to help you, because if you use these scriptures, what you'll realize is if you honoring your ancient mother and your ancient father, you'll realize that you don't have much of a need for a hospital. You should go and get your checkup every year, but you shouldn't need to go every single year for major things. You might have once or twice in a 20-year period of time where you might have some major problems. But if you honoring your mother and your father, your ancient mother and your father, well, you're going to get different kind of results out of everything, because there's wealth in our ancient ancestry, and we've got to come to an understanding of this. So I'm really happy that Dr. Steele brought us to that point of getting back to our ancient ancestors' ways, because those are the sustainable ways. Those are the ways where you don't need money to achieve whatever it is that your goal is, or whatever your objective. You don't need money. You don't need all these other things to get
Yeah.
there. All is provided.
And I would like to say that during the last clinical trial that we went through, what really became very clear to me was people choosing man over God, right? And as I taught during that period, man does not have a good track record of playing God, right? We know that we are part God, but in terms of playing God, and now I'm the oh, holier than thou, and I know what is best for every human being on this planet. Absolutely not. And you know not to derail the conversation too much, but we have to start standing up against Black bodies being tested on, right? Unconsciously or consciously, electively or not, because a lot of these practices of colonization of our colonized healthcare system are far removed from the land that we used to come from, that we originated from. What we were told was barbaric. What we were told was filthy and horrible, and all the things. I can't even, articulate them because it just blows my mind. We have to really address our internalized oppression and our shame that's attached to being taken and lost. And we get to use our power and reclaim our place. It is time
Absolutely.
for us to take our place.
That's a fact. It's definitely time for us to take our place. And I want to piggyback on what Dr. Steele has been giving us. Please understand, all of y'all out there. And matter of fact, I want to thank y'all for being here. And, really appreciate all the comments. Matter of fact, let me put it back up on the screen. DP Total Body Care, appreciate you. Good afternoon to you as well. Thank you for being here with us every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we hope to see you again. So we've got to take the time to practice what the ancestors practice, right? So let me give y'all a little bit about how Ferdinand practices those things, because we're not just talking. Dr. Steele and Ferdinand actually do these things in real time. All right. So one of the things that Ferdinand does is I go over to a local farm that I've got a great relationship with the farmers, and I scoop up hundreds of gallons of manure. Right. Well, this manure is created by animals that are eating fruits and vegetables every day. Now, a bunch of the fruits and vegetables they're eating may be slightly tainted, okay? But what we know is they're grass-fed animals. They're fruit, vegetable, nuts, seeds, legumes fed animals, all right? So now we can kind of filter out some of the nonsense that may have been in that food, because once they push out what they've eaten, well, the farmer puts it in a pile. They leave it sitting over there for a very long time, right? So there's worms tearing it apart, all kinds of bugs eating it up. The circle of life is happening the way it's supposed to. Then I come over there and I get a whole bunch of it. Now, listen, I don't go to the store and buy any of them bags of soil. I don't buy any pesticides or any kind of sprays or none of that kind of stuff. I go and get the manure for free, bring it back, and I mix it in with the existing soil. Then I grow food out of it. That food that I'm growing, it's more nutritious than most of the grocery stores you could go to, and you only got three things in the basket and you spent $55.
Exactly. Once you start to put a plan in place, it's so much more affordable and cleaner and healthier and all of the things. The other thing that I wanted to touch on with this is just people, I think, and I don't want to say this in generalization, but I will say this is that we get really caught in this rat race and we get really intoxicated with more of this colonized way of living, right? And so I remember when I lived in that Western colonized environment, I'm overworking, I'm undervalued, underappreciated. I'm constantly, there's demand, 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 right? And even though I know all of the things, right? I don't have time. Why don't I have time? Because I'm constantly giving to others, giving to others, giving to others, neglecting myself, right? Because epigenetically, that is what we are trained to do as Black women, is to self-sacrifice, is to give. And I found myself in very much this plantation mindset that really did not work. And that in and of itself broke me down, right? So I'm carrying the weight, not just of myself, but of others around me, the emotional weight, the burden of carrying that, right? So just when I left the States, I was like 190, but I was stressed out. It wasn't that I ate bad. It was all over the place. Sometimes I'd eat, sometimes I wouldn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? My energies were draining. I was always working tirelessly, doing this, doing that, dedicating my life to what I thought was self-service, right? When in fact, I was depleting myself. So again, a revolutionary act for Black women right now is to rest and do less. After leaving the States and having to decolonize my mind, my Western mind, my, American nationalism, the whole thing, the red, white, and blue, all the propaganda, right? And I was able to take a step back and get back to nature, right? Get my hands in the dirt, have to struggle, have to like
Right.
suffer, have to, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't realize, as in westernized countries, you don't realize, right, how out of touch
Yeah.
time and space we are. We are like a phone away from a bad healthy choice.
You
you
know,
know
balance is super necessary. I highly recommend all the ladies, all the brothers out there who are watching, please take the time to do what Dr. Steele just said. Work a little less, but get more results out of it. How did we do that? We kind of take a back seat, we sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper, and we come up with a plan.
yeah
And
yeah
then we go out and we execute that plan. But see, I have a 4-step process that I like to give y'all. Right. So how this 4-step process goes like this: goals, right? First, you got to set a goal. You got to have a strong desire. You got to write it down. It has to be written down, right? You can Google Doc it, or you can write it out, right? But it's goal, right? And after you got that goal, now you got to sit down in meditation, and you got to properly brainstorm, right? And this brainstorm, you got to get some things on paper, right? So those visions that you see, all of that, you got to get that on paper, right? Because each of those things that you've written down on that paper, they're actually a step in the plan. But you've got to take what was in the brainstorm. Now you got to organize it into a plan, and then you implement, right? So this is the 4-step plan: goal, brainstorm, plan, implement. But first thing you need to do is you got to do like the little girl in the picture with Yeshua, and Yeshua's got the big old teddy bear behind his back, and he's like, "Hey, baby, hey, little cutie, go ahead and give me that old teddy bear that's falling apart." Right? Well, you can't have the big teddy bear until you give up the old one, and you don't get to know that there's one behind his back. Right? Well, it works the same way in adulthood. Right? You got to step back a little bit. You got to sacrifice, let go of a couple of different things, and then what happens once you do that is now you have the clarity to choose a way forward, to choose your deep core desires. Once you've done that, the next step that's going to automatically happen, your awareness is going to increase exponentially on that desire, that goal, the ability to achieve it. You're going to be able to see all these things that Dr. Steele and I are talking about concerning this dirty dozen, and all of these different types of chemicals that are being put in the food in one way or another, for preservative purposes or for other types of purposes. You're going to be able to see that. It's going to be easy to see. Not only are you going to be able to see it, you're going to be able to taste it. Your palate is going to be able to detect it.
Mhm. Yes, and that's the thing. It's about coming back to self, right? And trusting self, and trusting, knowledge is one thing, right? Book knowledge is one thing, but if you're not practically applying it and you're not fully integrating it into your life, then it's not real, right? And there's so many false prophets out there, and there's so many people who are not doing the work. And it's important to also recognize at the same time that it's a journey and it's a process, and to let go of shame and to have, right? And so we are beginning to learn how to have and how to be and how to give. And I'm really excited about sharing a very practical tool, because I know we talk a lot about mindset and different thought processes and different resonance, but understand that when you're healing, it's not a linear experience. It's not that colonized approach that we're trained. It's like, okay, I'm always looking for the symptom, or I'm always looking for the one, treatment that's going to fix it. And so the holistic solution, they are solutions, right? But it's progressive. It's going to take time. You're going to start with the dirty dozen and then eventually get into, let's say, water purification systems or air purification systems, or all of these things create an investment, right? Of time, of energy, of resources. And so take your time. Like, I've been in this for so long, and it was always a priority, right? And so I always kind of maneuvered and found a way, even if it was like, oh, okay, so I'm, using up the rest of this product, and so I'm going to buy something new. So I'm, using up the last of these non-organic strawberries, and now next time, if it's available, I'm going to get some organic ones. It's just about replacing things out, not stressing yourself out any more to fit into some sort of perfectionist YT supremacy, role.
Exactly. I want to touch on that. Well, before I do, I want to thank everybody who is showing up to the Holistic Solution, being a part of our live audience, being a part of our virtual audience, sending in comments, liking and loving and sharing. Please share this to your friends, to your family members. Please understand that what Dr. Steele and I are doing, like, we're not here trying to get money out of anybody. What we're here to do is help the people. We're trying to bridge. We're doing it the best we can. We're trying to bridge someone who has amazing academic knowledge and experience in hospitals, and somebody who comes straight out the bush. And we're trying to bring that together and give away the knowledge. So
Yeah.
please share this with other individuals, because there's a lot of people out there suffering. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there dealing with different issues and they don't understand the causes. So that means that they're consistently trying to deal with the effects to make that cause go away. It's never going to happen. They've
Yeah.
got to understand the cause to be able to deal effectively with the effects. Now, one of the things that I've done, because Dr. Steele, she just said it. She said, hey, make some small steps. Let me tell you about the small steps that Ferdinand made. All right. So what Ferdinand used to do is he would make the 15 bean soup. We talked about this on one of the episodes. And well, I would eat that when I was broke and I would eat that when I was sick. And I noticed that when I was sick, this was better than medicine. Not necessarily tasted better, but it got me results faster. And I didn't really understand that I was boosting my minerals and I was getting all my vitamins and all those things that I needed. What I realized was that I was able to go back to work and keep making money. I was able to get back on the basketball court, right? So these were just small little changes. So I got to a point where I just stopped using medicine altogether. And every time I was sick, I'd eat the jungle soup. Eventually, I got to a point where I said, you know what? If this does this for me, maybe I should eat it every day. And then I started eating it every day. And it was just small changes that got me there. Right. And it might not be jungle soup for you. It might be going to your local health food store and getting you a green smoothie or something. And that's how you start. Right. But start is more so what I'm trying to get at. Take the first step because our birthright, all of us, is this earth, is this whole universe. Every single one of us, this is our birthright. All is provided, right? So if we go ahead and provide these things for ourselves, that is right out here that we can see, it's in our environment every day.
Mhm.
Well, what happens is we start to have disease, dis-ease, fall off like dead skin, and we sit back like, how am I just losing weight? Why is it that I don't have ADHD anymore? Where did the diabetes go? Well, it went the same place it would always go if you were using the earth.
Exactly. I think that we often, again, we still have that colonized way of thinking in our healthcare, right? So even though we want a more natural approach, we still have the same way of thinking. So then we go, okay, so what herb can I take for this? What, supplement can I take for this? And I think that it's important to understand that, like, if you're eating crap, taking an herb is actually dangerous because it can pull minerals out. So if you're already mineral depleted and you take more herbs, right? Herbs are medicine. So anyone that's just telling you, okay, minimal information about diet and just herbs, 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 that's a red flag because the body can't handle that. We most of our nutrition needs to come from our food, right? Herbs are what? Occasional. Now, doesn't mean we can't do herbal teas like ginger and things like that. I do that all the time, right? But we want to make sure that we're focusing on our food first before we're spending a whole lot of money on testing. In functional medicine, they run thousands of dollars worth of testing, and that's how we're trained. But what I have found is getting people back to very simple practices, healthy, clean water, different filters. We can definitely do an episode on that. Our food supply, like our food supply is key. And the Dirty Dozen, I think I always found was like such a really accessible tool to teach people to really open them up. So also too, let me talk about where the Dirty Dozen comes from. So it's actually based off of a study. So Environmental Working Group, they are a third-party independent research lab, and they actually study a lot of toxicity in our environment. You can look them up online, ewg.org. They put out these great guides. They put out like a guide for, your cleaning products, your skincare products. They have water filtration. You can even look in your database. They have a database. You can look your zip code and see what your water looks like in your particular area, because the municipalities have to report that information. So it's just a really good centralized place. They have all the studies. Of course, it is a website. So they have, you can sign up to become a member and all that stuff. But they have a lot of great free information that is just very, very good. So the Dirty Dozen is what they put out. So they put out every year kind of their list. I think it's every year. They put out their list of 12 things. So let me go over the list and then we'll talk about it hopefully. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was about kitchery. So I remember when I did lots of copious amounts of yoga, and I was all big into the yoga thing, and so we would eat kitchery a lot, which in India, right, is a simple dish. It's like rice and mung beans and pretty much just like your whole kitchen, right? That's how I could remember it. And really you would just sit and, when you're not feeling well or even just general. So I think every culture definitely has like your equivalent of a bean soup. Okay, so the 2024 Dirty Dozens is strawberries. They're always on the list. Spinach, kale, collard, mustard greens, grapes, peaches, pears, nectarines, apples, bell and hot peppers, cherries, blueberries, and green beans. These items were found to have the highest pesticide loads among 46 tested crops, with many samples showing residues of multiple different pesticides. The list serves as a guide to consumers looking to reduce their pesticide exposure, especially when purchasing non-organic produce.
Wow.
So,
I'm
yeah.
sorry for cutting you off, Dr. Steele, but
Sure.
that just like smacked me in the face.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry. Please keep going. I just had to do that.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah. And so I'll just reiterate, right? So they actually test every year. So they test 46 randomized crops, and then they look at the samples showing the residue, and then they test for what they are. So they found multiple different pesticides. And then they say, okay, these are all the foods that have the highest amount. And really they hold on, like for instance, strawberries have a really thin skin. So pesticides get in there and it pretty much gets into the whole thing. A lot of times grapes is number 4. I always call grapes like pesticide bombs. People hate it when I say that, but literally think about it. Like the skin is so frail that, it's a pesticide bomb. What can I say? Sorry. And that goes for wine too. So you definitely want, if you drink wine, you're going to want to and then wine. Oh my gosh, we should do a whole show on wine. I've gone deep on the alcohol world. That's a whole nother.
It's not very often that somebody could kind of wow me or surprise me. I done seen a lot. I done been all over this planet. That right there just kind of floored me. I already knew that there was a problem. Make no mistake about it.
Of course.
But it's one thing to learn that these are the highest content of foods, with pesticides in them. So, when you think about that, Dr. Steele, help me understand a couple of different ways to deal with this. Because I know one of the ways, you could pour some water, put your fruit in there, put some baking soda or something, or some vinegar or whatever. That'll help a little bit. But a lot of these pesticides are in the actual fruit. So what do we
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, really, like those foods, absolutely. And I know what you mean about like, whoa, because even when I read it again, I was like, wow, like because so many of those foods are so common, right? And again, they're tested every year, so they change. So I haven't even looked at it this year, bad girl, right? And I mean, I don't live in America either, but when I looked, I was like, wow, like that's like strawberries. I eat those all the time. Peaches, I love those, but I don't eat them as much. Apples, I like every day. Cherries, love those. Blueberries, green beans, I mean, a lot of those things are staples. Kale, collards, mustard, those are spinach. Those are all staples that people eat, right? And so if you're not thinking about it, it's like, whoa, you first hear it. And the fact too, I think what makes it even more amazing is the fact that this isn't just made up. This isn't just like, oh, we're thinking, like this is verified. They tested this, they tested that, and they know, what's going on, which is nice.
Wow. Like that. I'm sorry, but that just kind of threw me off because it makes somebody like me feel like everything I feed my children, I've either got to grow it myself or I need to go and forage. I need to find some heavily wooded areas, and just kind of, you know, do my rounds in those areas and look for foods that are growing there and feed that to the family because it it's like everything in the grocery store, no matter what aisle that it's on, perimeter that it's on,
Yeah.
it's tainted. It's dangerous to give to yourself. It's dangerous to give to your children.
Yeah, precisely. Well, and also too, we, talked briefly about, a lot of the food recalls that are happening, listeria, salmonella, it's not, and also too, in these factories, I'm sure the sanitation is not where it needs to be. Also too, as they're, moving from one place to another, shipping, all of that, the time that it takes from when it's been picked, it's been processed, and it's been shipped to. And a lot of times in places where, they have abbreviated growing seasons, because they don't have full sun all year, they're importing foods from other countries, which isn't necessarily, always a bad thing per se, but you also have to think about your microbiology in your gut, your bacteria. You have to think about all that kind of stuff,
Absolutely.
just in terms of how it's going to all combine.
And just for the I didn't mean to steal Dr. Steele's wisdom, but just for the audience, so y'all understand, this is a peer-reviewed article that Dr. Steele and I were taking a look at right before the show. And there's some alarming things in here. Dr. Steele, I could talk from the Bush perspective, but you got all the big words. You make it sound good.
I like the Bush perspective. It's very humbling. It keeps me, it keeps me grounded. It keeps me back to my roots, which I like. So it's
Well,
not a
before you jump in,
okay.
then it's okay. I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
let's do it. Let's do it. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's
I
the
just
purpose
want
of the show. Go
I
ahead.
just want to point out a couple of things
Yeah.
for the parents out there. I want y'all. I want to read this to y'all. Right. I'm not even going deep into this just yet. I just want y'all to hear this. A diet rich in fruits and vegetables, FV, is associated with reduced risk for many diseases. However, most children in the U.S. do not meet recommendations for fruit vegetable intake. In fact, from 2003 to 2010, no socio-demographic subgroup of children met the U.S. Healthy People 2020 total vegetable target, and only children aged 2 through 5 years met the fruit target because dietary patterns established in childhood persist into adulthood. A large number of policies and programs aim to encourage children to eat more fruits and vegetables. Accurate assessment of children's intake is critical to judge progress toward this goal. Please understand that not only are our children not eating the proper amount of fruits and vegetables, Dr. Steele just made it clear that a bunch of the fruits and vegetables they are eating, if they're even eating those, are they have the most pesticides in them amongst the foods in the grocery store.
Correct. Yes,
Please
exactly.
understand, and I'm so sorry for cutting you off. I'm gonna say this,
Good,
I'm gonna be
good.
quiet. Please understand, parents, your food is poisoned. Your children's food is poisoned. If you like to give your children food that represents love, represents compassion and empathy, it is very, very important for you to grow your food. Go and buy a couple of different books that helps you identify plants in the wild and learn which plants in the wild are nutritious, that give specific benefit for iron, give specific benefit for calcium, give specific benefit for iodine or bromides. Please take this serious, because what we are giving to everyone right now should help you see there is almost nothing in a grocery store that's safe except for the smile that the cash register attendant will give you.
Yeah, precisely. So, no, on TikTok, let's see, Rebels Esquire. No, we're still on. It's just we are streaming on YouTube as well, and so yeah, just go ahead and tune in. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going over a study that actually looked at baseline data from children aged 2 to 12 years old, in low income households in 4 US states. So they looked from New York, North Carolina, Vermont, and Washington. They also were testing out a specific tool, measuring skin carotenoids, with a particular scanner, which I thought was really interesting. The result actually concluded that they do think that this particular scanner is a positive tool to be able to assess the skin carotenoids. So that's really good. Let's see. Hold on one second. There
You want me
was
to go back to that study you were just talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I was looking at that, and there was one other thing that I wanted to Yeah, I really like the fact that like they were validating this particular tool. It was an automated self-administered 24-hour recall, right? So they had these recall measurements when they were looking at. So I'm a big tester. I love to test things because then we can measure them, right? And so this is a short dietary assessment tool, right? So they use one that's already been validated. They cite Thompson et al. 2002, and then they use this automated self-administering method that they reference from National Cancer Institute, and then they used a comparative analysis of multiple assessment methodologies, and then did reveal coherence between dietary reports and physiological measures. So they matched, right? And they were looking at serum carotenoids in that particular comparative analysis. That was Morgan 2019. The development and validation of these assessment tools are crucial for research and public health strategies aiming to improve dietary habits, especially among different populations. So as we were talking before, different areas, we talked North Carolina, for instance, tons of, farmland, right? And so we know that herbicides and pesticides can deplete minerals, and if the soils are not, stripped minerally as well, plus the amount of GMO farmers that are being produced, well financed, unfortunately, and so I don't blame the farmers. They have to feed their families, for sure. However, and also, major corporations like Monsanto put a lot of pressure on, small mom and pop farms. They make it almost impossible. When I went to Virginia, I was shocked to realize that they actually paid certain farms not to grow in order to restrict the access to the food. So there's a lot of different issues going on. And so I like the fact that you can assess yourself. I mean, obviously, this isn't a direct to consumer product and, it's just in research, but definitely shows some, positive correlation for, finding a dietary measurement, because, we have a lot of testing tools like in functional medicine. We'll do like obviously basic blood for, let's say vitamin B6 or vitamin B12 or magnesium, even though it's not as accurate in blood, and then we'll have like an organic acids where we look at absorption, small intestines. Then we'll look at things like SpectraCell micronutrient panel that looks at almost like your hemoglobin A1C does, where your 3-month fasting average, that's on your red blood cell, but the micronutrients on your white blood cell. So we can actually see, how much you're holding on to your nutrition. And that's just based off of lab work. So to have a tool, a skin tool, especially with kids, to have a skin tool that's super easy that, you can pop it. We'll see, obviously, these things are just still in development, but I think it's interesting that we can look at different regions and go, okay, because of their food sourcing and because of their food supply, this is what's happening too, because there is going to be an impact, whether we like it or not.
That's a straight up fact. I don't know. Like today, no, like I said, I'm a little flabbergasted. I'm a little like outside of my element today because I I eat as healthy as humanly possible for somebody who lives in America. Like I'm in the middle of the suck. And it's vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes every day. Like my fast meal just about every day is a kale soup that I came up with called jungle soup. And then I pour trail mix in the bowl with the kale soup that has like ginger and turmeric and all this stuff in it. And then I pour hemp seed shells or whatever in the same bowl. This is what I'm eating every day. And the hard reality is some of that in there might be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, indeed. Well, and exactly. I think too, there's always that initial shock of, oh my gosh, I eat all these things. And remember, for those people that are just joining, we're talking about the Dirty Dozens list. So 2024 Dirty Dozens list from Environmental Working Group, which is a third-party independent research, wireless independent research lab where they tested actually 46 crops for the highest pesticide loads. And they found they do this every year. And so strawberries, spinach, kale, collard, mustard greens, grapes, which I always call pesticide bombs, peaches, pears, nectarines, apples, bell and hot peppers, cherries, blueberries, green beans. So these samples show the highest residues of multiple different pesticides. And so these foods actually hold on to pesticides. So you want to get these organic. That's why they call them the dirty dozens list, because it's the dirtiest of all of the fruits and vegetables that they tested. And so you want to make sure that those are organic. Now, let's say you're like, hey, I just can't do it. I understand, making sure that you have really good cleaners. There's nothing that's going to guarantee, but apple cider vinegar, water, baking soda, like we talked about before, really trying to alkalize it. Also, too, a 0-point frequency plate. I don't even, 0-point global. You can look them up. But they made this green plate. It's so cool. They still make it. And you could just put your food on it. We used to do these demos and things that were so amazing. And, they'd have like, a lemon, and you put the lemon on the thing, and of course lemons are sour, and so they show the lemon sour, and then you put it on the plate for a few minutes, it sits there, and then you pull it off, and then it's like sweet or just tastes totally different. And that just shows you the impact of the pesticide. So they have that as well. It's not cheap. I think it's like around $200, something like that. And so that is an alternative as well, but still trying to get at least those foods organic. And then I'm big locally sourced on the way to growing your own food, because we have to get off the food supply. The herbicides, pesticides, I have pulled, so eczema, psoriasis, all of these quote unquote diagnoses. I'm not saying all of them, I'm not saying everyone, but your skin is a secondary drainage pathway. Meaning that if your primary drainage pathway is your liver, your kidneys, your blood, your lymph, your lungs, your large intestines, if those are, and I know I'm simplifying it, but if those are full, right, it's going to lean to what? Your skin, your sinuses, and your reproductive organs. So if you have sinus issues, it's usually a liver issue. You have skin, it's usually liver and small intestines, like infections and stuff like that, because the liver dumps in there. So if you have all these exposures to herbicides, pesticides, Wendy's, McDonald's, Taco Hell, all the things, right, with food dyes, additives, colors, and then you're eating non-organic produce here and there, you're literally walking around, and then you're wondering why your skin is itching and gross or whatever. When like I said, I left the States stressed out at 190 pounds just over this it's not a short period of time, but over the course of a year to 2 years, I dropped all of it. And I'm down back to, almost where I was when I moved to Virginia. So definitely your area has a lot to do with it. I know specifically different regions of, the United States, because we had to actually in school, we have to study these things. Like there are actual places and sources we had to look up, and databases we had to look up, and we had to look up city municipalities and, actually see beneath the surface what was going on, because we take for granted and we assume that our government has our best interest at heart. We assume that because all of these institutions are built like, Johns Hopkins and, all of these big name things, Sloan Kettering, and nothing against those places, whatever. But, we put these places on such a big pedestal. We have literally elevated Western medicine to a godlike state. And I believe that is deep rooted in our own shame, because we're constantly told, we're barbaric. It's not scientific. It's not evidence-based. So since when did we need science to prove that proper nutrition is healthy? Since when did we need to have science to prove that a lack of herbicides and pesticides in our food is a good thing? Since when did we have to have science to say that clean water, clean air, right, are good things? Like at a certain point, stop the insanity. I get science. I love scientific method. I am a big believer in it. However, with all the special interest groups that are backing these research studies, that are, I'm sure, hand palming this person and that person and this person, right? We're not actually getting real, true information. We're getting filtered, right? That's why health access is such a huge issue. We need to have access to pure, unadulterated, uncorrupted data, which is what I've done and what I continue to do with remote patient tracking, with educating patients about what their numbers are. Simple numbers, your pH numbers. your salivary pH, your urinary pH, about your buffering system, your respiration rate, your breath hold time, how that relates. Are you building more acidity in your body? Because we're nothing more than houseplants. For real.
Thank
We're
you.
literally
Thank you. And
hydroponic.
the roots are the villi in
Yes.
the intestinal tract.
Exactly. Absorbing all of the nutrients, right? And what are you putting down? Every time you're eating, you're asking yourself, what organ am I going to feed with this meal? Right? How am I going to help? How is it going to help my immune system, my hormonal system, all the systems I keep complaining about? I keep aching and paining. Okay, what foods are good for what organs? What good foods are good for that? I tell you, garlic is good for just about everything. Onions are good for just about everything, like there is ginger, just about everything. There are certain ancient staples, right?
Even if you're trying to get rid of vampires, all y'all out there that's worried about the vampire sucking blood, get you some garlic. Make sure you eat some too, though. Don't just hang it up around the door.
Well, with the upcoming election, I think we're going to need all the help we can get in the zombie apocalypse because
It's a fact, though.
let me tell you. So, yes, agreed. I think that more garlic, the better, more onion, the better. Obviously, if you're allergic to garlic and onion, please don't eat it. However, for the vast majority of us, praise God, we can eat, consume, an antimicrobial. One thing that's fascinating, I want to kind of leave the listeners with. Back when I was, again, in like training and all that kind of stuff, we learned about natural antivirals, right? And natural antibiotics. And there's actually 2 books out there. They're still in print. I can't remember the author's name, but if you're curious, drop it in the comments and I'll find it for you. But so it's interesting because he wrote about all these herbs that are great for, healing this and healing that, all natural, 100% natural. So of course, I'm like, Dora the Explorer. I'm like, let's go find it. Come on. What was that guy's name? Swiper. So anyway, so I'm like, come on, Swiper, let's go. And so sure enough, what was interesting, I guess Swiper had already gotten there because I was not able to find now one of those herbs on the planet. And the one I actually employed one of my other naturopathic colleagues that I was training at the time, and she sourced it. The only place she sourced it was Africa, right? We were trying to get it out of Africa, right?
But of course not.
So I just want to put it out there, that maybe, just maybe, the institutions that we have learned to trust our everything with, maybe possibly historically, scientifically, maybe don't have our best interest at heart. And maybe we need to just start educating ourselves and empowering ourselves. Ferdinand came together again. He's very self-taught. I absolutely respect him as a self-taught person, right? And I respect self-taught people, right? That are not profiting off of other people. So if you are a self-taught person, right, and you have not done the work of, working on yourself and healing yourself and practicing and working with your family and being a strong practitioner of self first, you have no business teaching other people. And even still, there are still nuances involved. So you have to be careful, which is also why me as a professional, I've spent years learning this, but more importantly, putting a structure in place.
Let me chime in on that. I got to.
Good.
Listen, I'm telling y'all right now, there's a process to this. Okay, to being able to help someone heal. But you first thing you got to do is know. This is not about belief. Belief is for suckers. If you choose to walk this path of being a holistic health provider, a herbalist, or whatever other names of the profession that we can come up with, you need to do exactly what Dr. Steele just said. You need to use yourself as human trials. You sit down and you need to read the material on these different plants. You need to read about the pesticides. You need to learn about water. You need to learn about exercise. You need to learn about sleep. You need to learn about goals. You need to learn about nutrition, right? You need to learn about whatever the sixth one is that I'm missing. But the point that I'm trying to make is you need to do exactly what she just said, or you have no business being out here trying to help people, because you can create more harm than good if you have not actually walked the path for yourself so you can see how it works for you. Now, understand that how it works for you may not work exactly for the next person, but you still need to have a baseline understanding. And without this baseline understanding, you could create so many problems and then sit back and you might not get sued. Oh, but you're gonna have to pay the heavy price. You're gonna have to pay that universal karma price.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize how heavy that is. It's gonna be much heavier than what some judge in the Supreme Court could give you.
Correct. And so I see a lot of people on social media right now kind of living high on the hog because we live in a very unregulated but heavily regulated. How does that work? So there is a lot of nuance to our profession, and there's a lot of confusion to our profession. So I also posted on YouTube just this morning, actually, holistic providers, who they are. I have a deeper webinar that goes into it, and it looks at everybody's scope of practice. Nobody's immune, because everybody wants to do holistic medicine, right? The chiropractors want to call themselves holistic doctors. The naturopaths want to call themselves holistic doctors. The medical doctors want to call themselves holistic doctors. And the reality is that you have to have a culture, you have to have a bloodline, you have to have an ancestry to be holistic. It is not just something you go, it's not a certificate course. It's not a, oh, I did, 10 solid hours of YouTube. Like, just because you have MD, DO, DC, just because you have letters does not mean that you can colonize something that has cultural context. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna go off for a second. So I have I love SEO, right? And so I was looking at like the SEO of my videos, and so the video is like, one on earth is a holistic doctor. And so it put like holistic medicine is like the SEO word, or whatever. Holistic medicine doctor is the SEO word. So it pulls up like where you are this is where you're going to go in the lineup of, people using that keyword. And I fell over at the other people using that keyword. And I'm not here to like judge, right, or shame people for their journey, right? But I'm just going to say this. If you are a overweight YT woman and you are trying to promote holistic medicine, I really question what the message, the intention, the what you are bringing forth. Because when you're working with, y'all can't see this on TikTok, but he has this Ferdinand, I'm going to call you in the back. You're so excited. I was it was all that. It was that. It was the other. It was like it was nothing. It was not us. And I'm so tired of us not being recognized for the work that we've contributed to medicine. Go ahead.
Yes, 100%. We are the creators of what medicine is in its entirety. That's not a personal opinion. That's a bona fide fact. I could prove it to anybody. If anybody wants to challenge me and be like, Ferdinand, write an APA or MLA paper about it, no problem. However much of the length you want, however many words you could choose, however many pages that you want, I could write it, and you guys will be sitting back like, wow, I didn't know that. And I have a PhD. Well, I can prove it to you. I got the books in my mastermind library. I got to run. But what I do want to say is this. Holistic health is all of our birthright. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves this. But this is something that's about demonstration. Okay. Please understand that what Dr. Steele just said, that doesn't just apply to Caucasian women who are overweight. That applies to anybody in my personal opinion. I respect what Dr. Steele said, but I think that applies to everybody who is not in proper demonstration. If you are demonstrating holistic health, well, you're going to look a certain kind of way. You're going to have a certain amount of energy. You're
Correct.
going to be able to communicate effectively. All of these things are going to be in alignment
Yes.
when you are actually demonstrating it. Now, at that point, in my opinion, you're not necessarily qualified to go practice it,
Yeah.
but you're in a much better position to go practice it if you so choose to. But you definitely need to be practicing on yourself first. Now, listen, Dr. Steele and I, we could go for another 2 or 3 hours because we love these topics. But we want to thank everybody who came out today for the holistic solution. Listen, we're coming back to you on Thursday, question and answers on the Dirty Dozen. You got questions about this fruit and these different foods that Dr. Steele just told you that's got so much pesticides in it? Come on Thursday at 12:30. We're going to be live. You can ask her questions face to face. You don't got to show up with your IP, with your IMO, MO, your IPO, whatever your healthcare plan is. Well, none of that. You can just and come in and talk to Dr. Steele. It's a very rare opportunity to be able to come into a virtual room and talk to a trained, extremely competent holistic health provider, naturopathic doctor, qualified counselor, and that person give you answers and you didn't have to pay them $1. Listen, I hope to see y'all on Thursday, every single Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, and I would just like to say when you so I'm a PhD in international psych, right? So I'm looking at not just race but also ethnicity, right? And origin. And so when we're looking at, your race is one thing, right? That's phenotypical, it's a social construct, right? Totally man-made. But then we look at ethnicity and then we look at the roots, right? It is the African indigenous woman, right? Not even the male. It is the Afro-Indigenous woman, the African woman, right? Who is the creator. And so we are the truth, we are the wisdom, we are not being heard, we are being unseen, unheard. And so I'm hoping that in this format and by our grace, I've spent my lifetime learning this stuff. I always like to say, I went to school so you don't have to, right? I love learning and I love breaking everything down and giving it to our people, because our people, meaning Black people across the diaspora, need this information the most. And I
Yes.
know that some people may be offended by that statement. However, Black people are the leading, right? We are leading chronic lifestyle diseases based off of low health education, low literacy, and also low access. So by giving this away, we have a Discord, we have, we're on different socials. We're in a soft launch right now. We're getting there, but we definitely are getting to the point that we just want to give away so much. I'm so excited. I was looking over all my PDFs and stuff to share with you guys. We're going to have, detox programs, all kinds of different things. It's going to be amazing. I'm really, really excited about it. And again, just giving things away so that you have resources, but also too, because I'm here and because I love public education and public health so much, we want to make sure everyone's safe and that nobody's hurting anyone.
Absolutely. And before we go, this is the last thing I'm going to say that I'm about to hit end. I want to thank Dr. Steele on behalf of everybody out there who's listening, because I want to say how rare it is to be able to come in contact with a naturopathic doctor who will give away their knowledge. Listen, I've been on this journey for 7 years. I can't even tell you how many medical doctors wouldn't even talk to me, how many naturopathic doctors wouldn't talk to me, or I just couldn't find them because there's not that many of them. And now we have a naturopathic doctor, a holistic health provider, a real competent professional right here in front of us. Listen, get the most out of this, y'all. Listen, y'all be blessed. Dr. Steele, you got any closing words?
Nope, I think I'm good. I think we've said a lot. I'm super excited to see you guys on Thursday.
See y'all on Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.